What's going on YouTube? It's Teej back again with another video, and today we begin our road to the 2023 NFL Draft, giving you some way too early position rankings. Today we're talking QBs. Hopefully you all enjoy today's video. If you do, be sure to hit that like button, help me out a ton. If you're new around here, want to see more draft and football content coverage in general, be sure to hit that big red subscribe button. And of course, this is just a catalyst for a conversation. Tell me what you think about this upcoming QB class down in the comment section. How would you rank them 1 through 5? Maybe give me some sleeper picks of guys you think could break onto the scene and maybe work themselves into the first round. This is going to be straightforward. This is a pretty chalky 1 through 5 for my QB rankings. This is relatively early, and I'll give you some honorable mentions in the back half of this video. But let's go ahead and run through this 5 up to 1. Tyler Van Dyke. Really nice second half of last year at Miami. This is going to be a fun team to watch, and we'll talk about Zion Nelson in the tackle class once we get to that video, but I think he's someone who could benefit from how many eyes are going to be on Tyler Van Dyke. He's kind of this Joe Burrow way of winning at the quarterback position. His arm strength isn't, he's not Justin Herbert, he's not Aaron Rodgers, Patrick, that's not necessarily his biggest strength, but great accuracy, really nice touch, and, again, this is going to be a fun team. They're going to be playing some big games, so he's going to have every opportunity to kind of showcase what he brings to the table. I think if he's consistent, showcases what he had at the end of last year, throughout this entire season, he's definitely a guy who could work himself in the top half of the first round, despite maybe some arm limitations. If it's a little rocky, up and down, maybe he's a late second round type of guy. We'll see. This is also, go back a year's time. We were talking about Spencer Rattler pretty much being a lock for the first round. A lot of things went wrong. So detrimental downturn here for Van Dyke or any of the guys on this list. They're probably out, but I'm obviously rooting for all these guys. If he puts together a really strong season, he's top half the first round. If he's up and down, solid pro day, throws at the combine, looks good there, I could see him being maybe back of the first into the second round. But again, we are really early on. These next two guys, Will Levis from Kentucky and Tanner McKee from Stanford, pretty similar. Levis, made Wan'Dale Robinson a second round prospect in the eyes of the New York Giants, right? This is a fun offense. It feels like an NFL system. This is the opposite. Both these guys are the opposite of Tyler Van Dyke. They win with their arm. These guys could throw it what feels like 1 billion miles an hour into a tight window, and that's how they'll win. Will Levis looked really good last year at Kentucky. Now it just comes down to seeing it for a second consecutive season. Because he did it for a full year last year, he feels harder to knock out of the first round, but he could, up and down, rocky season up ahead. Maybe he's a top of the second round guy, again, avoiding a detrimental downturn. But because of that arm strength, I feel like he's going to be an enchanting prospect. Remember when there was rumors of Kyle Trask working his way into the first round? And teams love guys with big arms, and that's exactly Will Levis. So to come down to see him doing it for a second consecutive season from start to finish, and doing it in the SEC is a huge pat on the back, and that might be what moves Will Levis over a guy like Tanner McKee coming from the Pac-12, which not nearly the same level of competition. But I'm a big fan of Tanner McKee, and during the college football season a year ago and the lead up to the 2022 NFL draft, we're kind of figuring out who's going to be that number 1 quarterback. There were some rumblings of Tanner McKee, and I started watching more Stanford games. This is not an offense that's going to open up the opportunity for him to put up gaudy numbers like a Jake Haener at Fresno State. We're going to talk about him in the honorable mentions, but some offenses put up gaudy numbers. Stanford, it's just not going to be there for a quarterback. But that being said, has the NFL size, NFL arm, enough mobility to make it work, and a little funky delivery, but puts the ball where he wants it. So to me, outside of maybe a quirky delivery, he's got the arm strength, the accuracy, and just enough mobility to make him an NFL prospect. And I'm a big fan of him. Had some nice moments last year, some nice games, came up big down towards the end of games too. That's always something that kind of stands out more when you see at the college level, natural leadership ability. And I think he's a guy that, again, put together a really strong season. He may well work himself in the top 10 next year. But again, Stanford is not going to have this offense where he's throwing for 5,000 yards, whatever. He's going to have more modest stats, and it's going to come down to actually watching tape and evaluating him as a quarterback. But I'm really rooting for him because I think he's a fun prospect and a guy who, maybe does, if all works out, rivals that of Bryce Young and C.J. Stroud. We'll talk about Bryce Young. You already know about him, right? One of the best players in college football last year. Alabama, one of the best teams in college football, right? The big knock on him is going to be his stature. Little short, and this isn't really necessarily fair, but we'll kind of talk about this with some of the honorable mention guys. But Bryce Young, if Tua Tagovailoa kind of puts together as this shorter stature, Bryce Young's got a better arm, but still Tua a weaker arm coming from Alabama, the school that's kind of had a hard time producing quarterbacks to the next level. This will also kind of go with Mac Jones, but he's a different build and a different type of quarterback in my eyes. But if Tua kind of puts together, I think that inherently kind of makes you view Bryce Young and his prospects and NFL potential a little bit in a better light, but has enough of an arm, really solid accuracy, And kind of like what we'll talk about with CJ Stroud is sometimes what will hold them back in some people's eyes is Alabama's so much better than a lot of the competition, and Ohio State's offense is so gaudy and they have so many good wide receivers that it's almost not fair for whoever's on the other side of the ball trying to slow down that offense. So you'll see some criticism there versus like a guy like Tanner McKee, who maybe is playing a level playing field, Will Levis, Tyler Van Dyke, et cetera, et cetera. But a big reason why Alabama and Ohio State are so much better than everybody else is because of Bryce Young, CJ Stroud. So I'm a big fan of Bryce Young, and if you were to have the draft right here today, right now, Bryce Young's probably your most clean, polished prospect. He's probably the most NFL ready of anybody in this bunch. But the reason I have CJ Stroud at number 1, I am projecting just a little bit bigger arm, more mobility. He's just got more natural, talent and more, gold to mine, so to speak. So I am doing a little bit of projecting here. This, could completely fall by the wayside. And I think a big thing that you'll hear a lot for CJ Stroud, and he's another guy, Justin Fields looks good this year and inherently kind of improves your vision on Stroud. And if Fields looks, rough despite his ecosystem around him, you'll hear those criticisms that came up in the NFL draft for Fields. Okay, well, this offense is so good and the wide receivers are so talented. They don't have a defense on their side that can slow him down. So he's not having to read defense. He's not having to make progressions. He's just throwing it to the open guy because that's what Ryan Day is asking of him. And you might see something similar, being a big critique against CJ Stroud. We won't know until we see it. But losing Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson, I still think that wide receiver room is going to be crazy. Jackson Smith and Jigma is going to be, probably my wide receiver 1 once we get there. And then also, Marvin Harrison Jr. in that room. Yeah, that's probably a stud in the making. So they'll still have a lot of receiver talent, but they do lose 2 first-rounders, so maybe that argument doesn't hold as much weight this upcoming year. But for right now, I'm going to project, go with the upside guy. CJ Stroud is my number 1 quarterback, and of course, we'll do this again throughout the year, and we'll kind of update these rankings. But let me go ahead and start talking about some of these honorable mentions. We'll go ahead and go top to bottom here. Devin Leary is a guy who, coaching staff singing praises of him. ACC, it may not be the SEC, but still, Power 5 football, he'll have a lot of opportunities to go against some top-tier teams, and, especially if this is a guy who, if he has that Kenny Pickett type of treatment and he has a big game against Clemson, especially I think Clemson will be, improved this year, and a couple of great defensive players on that, Clemson football team. So, if he has a big game against the Clemson Tigers, I can see that being one where it's like, all right, Devin Leary is a guy who could sneak his way into the first round conversation. I just need to see more of it. Not a guy I know a whole lot about, or honestly, no disrespect, don't watch a whole lot of NC State games live. So I'm really excited to watch more of the Wolfpack this year and then be able to dive into tape thereafter. Anthony Richardson is definitely, a boomer bust guy. He's either going to make it in the first round or he's going to be a project, late day 2, day 3 type of quarterback. The arm's there. He can move like nobody else really in this draft class. And he's got the size to go with it. If he figures out that accuracy, if Florida trusts him, they put the ball in his hands and he steps up. And that opportunity, that's going to be great for Florida and any Gators fans out there. You're going to be a happy camper. But this could be a guy who easily looks like an NFL quarterback, has those skill sets that a team could want and desire and fall in love with. And if he's good from start to finish, he's going to be a lock in the first round. But even if he just has enough moments, if he has 4 or 5 games where it's like, oh, okay, whoa, this is different. This guy just looks different at his best. I could see a team talking themselves into it, kind of like what we were talking about with Malik Willis last year, just from a guy who's going to be coming from the SEC and playing at Florida versus Liberty. So I could see a similar conversation being had around Anthony Richardson. And then moving on to Jaren Hall, and this is a really interesting prospect, and again, another guy who's kind of tied to an NFL entity in Zach Wilson, both about the same height. If Zach Wilson looks good in year 2 and creates those big plays that we saw at BYU, it'll inherently improve Jaren Hall's stock. And they both, again, same height, have that big playability, can make things happen outside the pocket. Jaren Hall kind of feels like the second coming of Zach Wilson in a lot of ways. So really fun player to watch, and some of the critiques you had against Zach Wilson are going to be there, I'm sure. The offensive line is better than maybe the pass rush. We'll see what this BYU team is, but if they have a good offensive line and Jaren Hall's not under pressure, that'll be held against him, and weaker competition in general will be the main thing you hear working against Jaren Hall. But hey, if Zach Wilson breaks out this upcoming year, it helps his stock, and if we see more of what we saw last year, that big playability, again, just like Anthony Richardson, it's going to catch NFL teams' eyes. Jake Haener, this guy puts up big numbers at Fresno State. Again, smaller school guy, so really need to see it from start to finish next year, and we're going to need some special throws out of him, and that's just not something I think I've seen a whole lot of from Jake Haener. So if he adds a couple of wow throws to his reel, when you look at the tape, it's like, all right, it's not just this guy who plays in an inflated offensive system. This guy actually has some touch, he has that accuracy, he has the ability to zip it past the defense, those types of things. See that a little bit more this upcoming year. He could be a sneaky late round or, mid-round, maybe even late first round type of guy. And the last guy, Spencer Rattler, he was presumed number one overall pick, if not one, then two, if you like Sam Howell more. But guy who took the biggest fall from grace I think I've ever seen an NFL draft prospect have, at least in my lifetime. But this is an opportunity for a rebound, right? You get away from Oklahoma. It's a bit of a reset. And you're going to South Carolina. You have a couple of guys coming with him and transferring in. SEC, that always looks good for the resume. So, South Carolina was about a 500 team last year, so I'm kind of worried about, how overall that team looks. But with Rattler coming in, a couple other transfers, this team could certainly take a step forward and maybe give him enough talent and enough, supporting cast around him to put up some big numbers. And really the thing with Rattler at Oklahoma was there would be some big plays, but it didn't feel like he was working within the system. And that's why, even if Caleb Williams maybe isn't as talented, doesn't have as big of an arm, and so that natural ability that you can't coach as a Spencer Rattler, he played within that Lincoln Riley offense a lot better, and it kind of just smoothed things out. Spencer Rattler has kind of learned how to, play within the rules and will work within that offense at South Carolina. That can improve its stock in and of itself, despite, whatever else may come and arise and what other obstacles he may face as well. So I think if he's learned how to play within an offense, I think that will do wonders for him. That being said, going from Lincoln Riley to South Carolina, if you're going to play within an offense, you wish you could have done it with Lincoln Riley. But that's going to do it for my 2023 way too early position rankings, but also some honorable mentions. Tell me what you think down below in the comment section. How do you think these guys shake out? Do you think there's some sleepers here in the honorable mentions that could work themselves in the first round? How do you think it plays out 1 through 5 next April? Love to have some of your thoughts and some prospects that are catching your eyes this early on. Hopefully you all enjoyed today's video. If you did, be sure to hit that like button. Help me out a ton. If you're new around here, want to see more football coverage, be sure to hit that big red subscribe button. That's going to do it for me. Hope you all have a fantastic rest of your day. Until next time, my name is Tej, and I'm signing off.